Welcome back to Fear and Beer, a Halloween Horror Nights podcast. Join us as we venture year-round into the fog.
Make sure you give us a like and a follow on your podcast platform of choice. Also, be sure to check out our YouTube page where we upload every episode in its video format, and maybe a few other surprises as well.
Make sure you're following us on social media to keep up to date with our newest haunted content.
I'm Nick.
I'm Seamus.
I'm Jamie.
We're here. I had to knock off the Bray Wyatt stuff because that's what we'll probably be talking about today. We got a handful of rumors that we haven't really discussed fully. And we did our guest map, we did our code name, stuff like that. But I feel like it's time to sort of talk about some of the rumors that have floated around as of late that we haven't addressed yet. Also, end of January, and we just randomly get dates leaked out onto the website with like a simple little tweet. Yep, we already got that. So this goes to show, I think, that we're in for a fairly unprecedented announcement season. Obviously, with all the stuff going on with Epic, I just think the timelines are going to be adjusted a little bit. So we're going to talk rumors. We're going to talk the dates. And then we're also going to get Jamie's thoughts on the guest map that we did last week, because I want to hear her input on this. She obviously had input on creating the map, but I think everybody else wants to hear her thoughts on which locations and which house ideas she thinks are going to sort of be sticking, or just initial thoughts on that. But that's what we're going to be diving into today. Of course, I have my trusty can of beer. And no, it is not Pumpkinhead. I'm drinking Sweet Baby Jesus tonight. Mm-hmm. This is from Dew Claw Brewing up in New Jersey. You can get this year-round in Florida. It is a chocolate peanut butter porter, and it's got natural and artificial flavors. This was first kind of brewed up in 2011, and it's black, it's muddy, it's tasty, it's got like a little rocky taste to it. It's really good. Thankfully, Florida is one of the states that you can get this year round, because not all states can. So I've had this before. Seamus, I know you've had this one before, because
yeah.
I'm on Untappd right now, and your review was right up there. So I'm just going to crack this bad boy open and get to the goodness. Mm-hmm. Anybody else? I know Seamus had a solo cup.
Oh, I'm drinking Mountain Dew. I have no alcohol right now.
Do the dew, baby.
I've really
giving my liver a rest.
All right, so I guess before
not that Mountain Dew is good for your liver, but sorry, continue.
No, God no. It's pretty much just like windshield
radioactive.
So before we get into anything new, let's get into the old stuff. Let's get into that guest map. Jamie, you were not here when me and Seamus dissected this and sort of gave our 2 cents on it. So we'll just go location by location really quick. We're not going to spend too much time on this, just because we have a whole episode dedicated to it. If you have not caught that, go back to last week and we dive pretty in depth on that. So for the properties on our guest map, I'm not even going to go locations, but we had Nightingale's Blood Steel. Me and Seamus theorized this would be something in the samurai Japanese style realm. What are your thoughts on that one?
I feel like that would probably interest me more than some of the past iterations that we've seen of the Nightingales. Like the Nightingale's Blood Pit is the one that we had a couple of years ago.
Blood Pit and then Blood Prey. Blood Pit was like the Roman style, and Blood Prey was the original.
I remember the Blood Prey. What year was that from?
I want to
2019, wasn't it?
Well, Blood Pit was
2019.
Blood Pit was 2019. Sorry,
but I forget off the top of my head.
I do too.
I wanted to say like early. I want to say 21, but I think that's right around there.
That sounds about right.
Yeah, that was more of a like World War One-ish, World War like style.
Oh,
house.
Think I recall this. Yes, that sounds so familiar now.
That's
gotcha.
I think off the top of my head that's accurate, but yeah, it's been a little bit, because 21, 29, and then now 35. There are those significant gaps, but it is a whole different genre, I guess, and that would be. We both agreed last week, Seamus and myself, that would be a fun.
I would love to dive into like the Japanese culture and everything like that too. It'd be really interesting to see, since we don't see as much of that.
Mm-hmm. Next up, we had The Last of Us Part 2. Not a huge fan of the first house, so I can only assume that your thoughts remain the same for a second.
Yeah, this really doesn't do too much for me, honestly. I just think that this is the type of house that didn't really need a sequel to it. I feel like it was a one and done kind of house. It was done. I'm not going to talk too much bad about it, even though I personally didn't like it. I know a lot of people that did. And the house was done very well, the way it was constructed, the costume design for the scare actors and everything like that. It's just, I've said it before, it just doesn't, I've never played the game. I didn't finish watching the first season of The Last of Us. Couldn't really get into it. It's just that post-apocalyptic that we've talked about that neither of us really, or any of us are into that much.
Redundant.
Yes.
You beat that thing dead.
Mm-hmm.
Scary Tales, and then I put a little tagline, "You shall not live."
I was looking at that.
Some sort of Scary Tales iteration.
I think, sorry, I was looking at I've got to plug in my laptop here shortly, guys. But Scary Tales would be right up my alley. And I feel like this is the type of original that it's an original, but it could still be based off of characters we're familiar with nursery rhymes and stories like that and whatnot. So I think this would be fun. And same with this. It's been a while since we've had a Scary Tales house, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Next up was sort of our White Whale Hail Mary style thing, and we put The Conjuring on the map. Obviously, The Conjuring has dipped its toes into haunt events as of late, being partnered up with Six Flags. We have the Conjuring Last Rites movie coming out very early September. My thought process behind this was that they sort of want to replicate that Insidious style horror. And I think the door should be open for this. What do you think on The Conjuring?
As soon as you said the Insidious style, I feel like I could definitely see this going down the road of being a mashup of kind of like the Conjuring universe houses, not just based solely off the first movie, maybe. But as someone who very much enjoys IPs, as you guys all know, this would be right up my alley because it's a movie and a franchise that I very much enjoy. Not my favorite compared. It's tough to say, actually. I feel like I've seen the Insidious films more and I like those more, but the Conjuring films are just good, classic, like haunting movies, haunted house movies, possession movies. I feel like it really dives into all that and executes it well. So I think it could be done really well in a house. And especially since if Six Flags is able to get it, I watched some of the walkthroughs on YouTube of when they had it at their Fright Fest, I think is what it's called. Mm-hmm. But it looked cool, so I could only imagine what Horror Nights could do with it if they brought it.
Now, on the spot, what do you think a percentage chance is of this actually coming to fruition?
15, because that's my lucky number, but it's still pretty low.
Okay, all right. Next up was another IP, Terrifier. Now, this has been kicked around the rumor mill. We had this on our guest map last year. Mm-hmm. Timing may be better this year. I don't know. What are your thoughts? I know everybody who listens knows you love Terrifier. So
I do. And I feel like this year would maybe be more realistic for it to happen after the third movie being released and being very well received and being back in the movie theater during Christmas time when it came out during Halloween. And it's not that I want to get my hopes up for something because it's way too early to even assume if something's going to be there or not, but this would definitely be something I'd be interested in. I know you had mentioned before that you could probably see it as like a best of Terrifier house, which would be fun, but I kind of like when a house follows a first film or a second film or kind of does it in like two parts like that. I like all the scattered about stuff and different scenes and stuff like that, but it's fun to feel like you're walking through the scenes of the movie kind of beginning to end as well. So if they were to bring out the clown, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but if they were to bring out the clown, I feel like this would be one of the biggest draws they've had in the last couple of years, for sure.
It's definitely grown in popularity.
Oh, yeah.
So next up, we have a Blumhouse house featuring Megan. Obviously, Megan 2.0 comes out in June. She's been at the event the last 2 years. Train keeps on rolling, or no?
I've had enough of her. I have. The photo ops were fun last year, but like, if everyone wants to talk about like Lil Boo and stuff like that being overdone, Megan is just so overdone at this point, it's going to turn into The Walking Dead. Which is unfortunate because, like, it's just when we saw the movie, we didn't like it. I haven't seen it since the first time we had watched it. I just thought it was kind of corny, and I don't know. I just feel like that killer doll movie belongs to like Chucky or like Puppet Master and stuff like that. I just feel like This just doesn't pique my interest. I feel like Megan doesn't need a whole entire house, even though they've never had a house per se, I guess, for her, which kind of makes me think they might lean that way. But I wish they would do it for like the Black Phone or something, or another Blumhouse mashup house would be cool too.
Well, I think the
If they
Black
had it-
Phone 2 comes out in October.
And that's what I was kind of worried about too, if it would be coming out too late. But I would even be happy if it was a Megan, unfortunately, and like the Black Phone too. That'd be cool.
I'm going to say something crazy. I kind of
Let's
want
hear
to rewatch Megan. I don't know if I mean, I remember I hated it, but I kind of want to rewatch it again now at this point.
I
It's
should
been-
rewatch it just to.
It's been
Yeah.
like 2 years,
It has been.
probably,
It has
right?
to- It's got to be, yeah.
Maybe more.
Yeah.
That was a while ago.
At least 2 years.
I probably will still hate it, but maybe now that there's less hype, I'll hate it less. You know,
Mhm.
like that adds to my hatred towards things.
Mm-hmm.
When it gets like super hyped up, I'm like, I throw extra hate on it just because it makes me angry that people are so hyped on one thing.
You know, it's a terrible trait that we have because, you know, I don't like giving into the hype for things either. And then I end up giving in and enjoying it usually. So
Yeah. So next up, Mardi Gras Murders, coming straight from Slaughter Cinema 2. Thoughts?
this would be fun. This was one of my favorite little movies that we walked through in the Slaughter Cinema. And especially being the first one, I feel like we kind of got a little bit more of space and area design that we got to see through it. And I think this would suit very well for a house. And I think it could be a pretty good chance of happening since they definitely have a lot of Mardi Gras props and stuff like that they could use and toss in there. And it would be interesting to see like a Mardi Gras slasher style house. I feel like it would kind of fill that void for the original slasher maybe. So
Next up, we had Hell's High Prom Night. And that was, so Hell's High was actually a house from, I think, HHN8.
Mhm.
But we sort of just came up with, because of Carnation, we sort of were led to like a prom style setting. So I wanted to give it some sort of tie-in with HHN lore. But we also do have Fear Street coming out at some point with that prom aesthetic.
Mhm.
So I guess any sort of prom theory,
Mhm.
is that a setting you'd want to see as a house?
I think I feel like I've maybe talked about this before or thought that a like prom high school kind of like dance setting would be really fun. I mean, you have Carrie, you have prom night, you have the new Fear Streets coming out, but you've seen the disastrous prom night with the killer in multiple films. And I mean, it would be really cool to see it inside a house, especially since I feel like they can make this a very cool original. Depending to see like what decade they go by, which would be kind of cool too. If it was like more of a maybe 70s prom or like 80s prom, I think that'd be fun as well. And I recall, obviously I know it was a long time ago, but I think I remember, I'll have to look into it now, the Hell's High, is that what it was? The house that was there
That was
before?
the house in 8.
Gotcha. Oh, was that 8? Damn, that was a long time ago. But I'll have to look into that. But yeah, this definitely piques my interest. I think it'd be cool.
Yep. We put a Western original on here. I don't know if it would be some sort of Return to Ghost Town or a Hatchet and Chains style house, which if we get Hatchet and Chains, I don't think we get Mardi Gras Murders, but I do think we get one of the two. I do think we get something Western this year. I think that was a testing ground for Slaughter. So Western, do you want to dive into the Western genre a little bit?
I think Western is
Yeehaw.
definitely... Yeehaw.
Giddy on up,
Right.
cowboy. There's a snake in my boot.
I feel like it's definitely a theme we've kind of missed on for HHN. We didn't really see it too much when we had, oh my gosh, I'm blanking out right now, Darkest Deal for Horror Nights. I feel like that was kind of what we thought was going to be our Western, and that ended up not really being too much of that track. As much as I'm not into Western flicks, books, stuff like that, I think they could make this pretty interesting. The Curse of Lightning Gulch, that house that they had before was really fun and really well done. So I feel like this could be maybe another iteration of that.
That
How do you
franchise.
say that franchise? There you go. If you want to say for like an HHN franchise, but yeah.
Yeah.
I can see it being plausible.
Yeah. We had Greek mythos original, some sort of like Greek god, whether that's some Hercules play, some sort of Medusa, some sort of like statuesque style thing. We had this Greek original last year as well, because it's just like I tend to find these subgenres that I find interesting. and aren't necessarily always included into HHN, and it's only, in my opinion, only a matter of time before some of these things happen.
Right.
So we figured one more shot. You have a 2-year limit on these guest maps. After that, we will not be putting Greek back on here if it doesn't happen again this year. So do you think we get anything in that world?
Would this be your Poseidon's Fury house? Is that what you're insinuating?
Ish. I don't think they'd call it Poseidon's Fury, but I think you could sneak some Easter eggs in there.
I think
I don't think Darkagon's going to be the main villain, but
it would be kind of cool. They would already have a story to go by. But I don't think so, unfortunately, either. But I mean, hey, they did the Dueling Dragons house, so who knows what they'll do.
the door's wide open.
Right. I mean, when I think about Greek mythology, I don't really know too much about the subject itself other than what I learned in school. I enjoyed learning about it in school, what I did and stuff like that, but I've never personally done like my own research for enjoyment out of it. So as much as it might not pique my interest or be something I'd be interested in, I feel like this could be likely something we could see in that Greek Roman mythology kind of setting for a house.
Yeah. And then finally we had seven deadly sins returned from the 21 scare zone. Do you think we get a 7 deadly sins based house?
I don't know if we do, but now I just keep thinking of your theory. 4 + 3 is 7 or 5, whatever you were saying. The numbers that you were doing.
Seamus pointed out last week, and this is how dumb I feel, that, well, you also add 2 and 5, and that's 7, but,
right,
you know,
yeah. But still, that's okay.
6, but if, you know,
but we might get it.
I was kind of going more off the fact that last year they used the 3s a lot, like with triplets and the Sinister Surreal, like they used the 3s, whereas other than like at 21, they used that kind of with the Casino Lady Luck theme. So they use the numbers sometimes, but I just kind of was going off the fact that maybe they'll keep that trend alive, and how can I incorporate 3 and 4? So I guess they could have brought it back at 25 or maybe at one of the future ones, but either way, it plays for right now.
I mean,
it's a stretch.
No, that's okay though. It's definitely a big enough gap if we were to see something like this again in the scare zone. I went that year for 21. It was a very fun year. One of my favorites, and the scare zone was cool. I've always been interested in like the 7 deadly sins stuff since, thanks to you, seeing the movie 7. Very much enjoyed as well. And I kind of like that take on it, that horror take on it. So I think it could happen? I feel like this is like more of the maybe boat for me. Like you really never know what they could pull out with this, just because it is a good theming that they could use. And it would be really cool if they would maybe include Lady Luck in the house. That'd be nice too. But more of them indifferent on this one.
Yeah. So we ended last week with sort of giving our guess of how many we think are correct. I think, Seamus, you said 2, if I'm not mistaken, and then I said 4.
Yeah, I said 2.
What do you think the number is, Jamie, on this that we get right?
I don't want to be that person, but I already had a number in mind, but I'm going to go with 3, I guess. 2, 3, and 4.
Okay. 2, 3, 4?
Yeah.
If you add up 3 and 4, it's 7. If you add up 2 and 3, it's 5. Yeah, no, I feel good about it. I always do until they start making announcements, and that's just kind of how it works. But either way, let's get into the actual recent rumors that have sort of been circulating. We've talked about it on our socials, but we haven't discussed it here on the pod. So I kind of gave a little timeline just because I feel like it is worthwhile to know this information because it'll come back around. So Bray Wyatt and the Wyatt Sicks has been tossed around. Now, this rumor came out from Legacy, and if they put it out, I put stock in it. So I'm curious how this all came about. Now, we know Mike Aiello is back in the creative aspect of Horror Nights for this year, and he's a huge wrestling fan. So, it's so tough. 2 or 3 weeks ago, I said, I don't think this would ever happen now that Bray's gone. I think if Bray was still alive, this would definitely be on the radar a lot more. I'm still not 100% sold on this yet. But for those who aren't familiar with the wrestling world and who Bray Wyatt is, I figured I'd give a quick little rundown as best as I can. I watch wrestling, but I'm not a historian. I don't remember 100% of all this stuff that he did. But
you'll get something wrong, and someone will let you know.
oh, I'm sure. But Bray Wyatt obviously had been wrestling for a while in FCW, I believe it was. But when he really came on the scene as Bray Wyatt, the character that we know, was when he kind of came back to NXT, which is WWE's sort of developmental show. And that's where in 2012 they formed what was called the Wyatt family with two other wrestlers, Luke Harper and Eric Rowan, both these big, giant, burly, bearded men. And they took on this Wyatt family persona that is sort of this backwoods, like not Hills Have Eyes rednecky, but almost like sermon level. Bray Wyatt would sit in his rocking chair with his Hawaiian shirt, his straw hat, and Rowan and Harper sort of like did the bidding. They had these big, like almost mechanic suits that were shirtless, and he would sit back in the rocking chair and he would kind of, be the mastermind, so to speak. So the Wyatt family always had this sort of like really creepy element. This is, I believe, when they started doing the Fireflies, and people would just put their cell phones up and put the lights on. It was this big movement. But he wrestled for a while. He went into singles competition under this Bray Wyatt character. But after the Wyatt family sort of broke apart, he, I think, sort of just fell a little stale with his character, and he had to sort of rejuvenate himself. So he took time off, and then he came back with this split personality style character where he was Bray Wyatt, this kind of fun, quirky, goofy, almost children's TV show host, almost like Mr. Rogers. He had the red sweater and he hosted the show, the Firefly Funhouse. And it was like these creepy little puppets, and it was just over the top goofy. And he then introduced this alter ego persona known as the Fiend. Very black and red, demonic style looking. He still came out with a little lantern, and that kind of took on a whole new wave of Bray Wyatt fans. So he's always dipped his toes in this weird horror-based world. And then, unfortunately, he came back in October of 2022, and we started to get these teases of like this Wyatt Sicks group. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? The rumor mill was going crazy in the wrestling world because everyone had these conspiracy theories of all of the little characters in the Firefly Funhouse becoming actual wrestlers. You had Rabble Rabbit, you had Husky, Huskus the Pig, Abby the Witch, Mercy the Buzzard, and people were like, oh, this person's going to be this person. This person's going to be this person. Unfortunately, before we got to that stage, Bray Wyatt passed away in August of 2023. So there was some time off. And then during that time, his brother, Bo Dallas, who at the time was released from WWE, there was all these thoughts of him taking this other kind of side character alongside Bray Wyatt as Uncle Howdy. And we actually saw teases of Uncle Howdy with Bray before Bray passed. So obviously when he passed, it was sudden, it was terrible, tragic, and time kind of got taken off by Rube. But then the Wyatt Sicks finally did come to fruition without Bray Wyatt, unfortunately. But you had Bo Dallas playing Uncle Howdy, who creepy little mask, big top hat. He had like thorns on it, weird mustache, almost looked like the Guy Fawkes mask to a certain extent. But then you brought back Eric Rowan, who was in the original Wyatt family, as Rabble and Rabbit. You had a couple other wrestlers. Dexter Loomis played Mercy the Buzzard. Nikki Cross portrayed Abby the Witch. And Joe Gacy played Huskus the Pig, who were all sort of themed after the characters on the Firefly Funhouse. So now that leads us, now everyone got a little lesson on Bray Wyatt, the Wyatt family, and everything. We'll start with Sheamus. Sheamus, we watch wrestling all the time. We have a decent understanding of this. I don't know where to start, but just thoughts on like the Wyatt family, the Wyatt Sicks. Have you watched them at all or seen them?
Yeah, unfortunately, I kind of fell out of it, wrestling in general, for many years, and I think I missed most of his come up, I guess we'll call it. I mean, I kind of caught on to some of it, the tail end of it. As I've kind of got pulled back into it a little bit, but I don't know as much about the history of his character and where he came from and how he developed it. And but I could tell just from what I did know or what I did see that it was a pretty well thought out story. He had a lot of, we'll call it lore or canon. Yeah, there was a lot there, and there's a lot to play with, and it definitely is very much kind of like how the Kane Undertaker storyline was when we were growing up and watching the height of the Attitude Era. So like that was obviously something that we were into as kids. So that really stuck with me, like those two storylines and then how they melded that together. And I felt like Bray was kind of that next guy to take that mantle. Like he was the next performer that could really mix story with the art, with the athleticism. And I think he did a really good job of doing that. So as far as pulling it in as an idea for some sort of house or attraction or whatever, I think it could work. I think it makes sense. I think the story is definitely there to be delved further into. And I don't think it necessarily has to revolve around Bray himself. It can definitely revolve more around the story of this Wyatt Sicks family that you mentioned and they've been talking about. I know very little about that stuff, so like I said, I haven't really followed too much of it, but I think there's enough there that Universal could really do something with. They haven't really said anything, right? This is just more still rumor, right?
All rumor, yeah. Jamie, I know you watch it when I watch it, and I believe you were watching it when they did the debut, and I was like, "Oh, shut up! Like, watch this! Like, you're actually gonna like this stuff!" Like, and then it's like, "Oh, this is." They kind of, the way they debuted was sort of like this like brutal attack. They almost made it look like they murdered people. Like
it was really cool.
They tore apart. Like they appeared in the audience at different spots with like the spotlight on them, and then it kind of like went dark, and then it cut to the back, and like they walked through the back, and everything is like destroyed, torn up. You had Gunther like bloodied, and like you had Chad Gable, like it looked like they murdered him with blood everywhere. It looked like a haunted house. But I mean, what do you think about the prospect of kind of adapting that to this?
So as someone who was never really into wrestling growing up or anything like that as much, I never really started watching it until we got together, honestly. And over the years, you've definitely gotten me more into it than I probably would have been now and more than I would have watched. And I remember some of when you would be watching it and they would be doing the Firefly Funhouse and stuff. And I always thought it was super cool. I was like, this is so like Rob Zombie, like super creepy, like the Firefly family from them too. And it was just, I thought it was a really cool idea for it being something that I'm not as interested in, but including or incorporating that horror concept that made me interested in it. And I feel like that's kind of what got me more into wanting to watch wrestling. Because even like you said too, when they were doing the premiere, their like debut, you were like, oh, like I know you're gonna like this, you should watch it. And I was like, damn, like that was really, really cool. And it's really unfortunate that Bray couldn't be there to see everything come to fruition and stuff like that. But as much as I'd be interested and would definitely enjoy having as a house, it's only the thought process of, is it too soon to do this? Because we had Triplets of Terror last year, and it's very similar. Even I feel like some of the masks, I mean, the bunny mask and stuff like that too. But my only other concern was this taking the spot away from another IP was my only thing too.
Possibly. Yeah, I'm curious where it would kind of fall under the umbrella. I mean, I would assume that it would be some sort of IP like grab, so that would kind of essentially take the spot of one. But the wrestling world has collided with HHN before. It's been a very long time and never on this coast, but at HHN 2000 in Hollywood, they did have an Undertaker No Mercy house.
I think I remember about that. Yeah.
Where you were
That's
kind
so
of
funny.
going through the Undertaker's family, the family business, I guess. It was a funeral parlor, and you had like Undertaker characters. You had Paul Bearer, Mankind, Kane, and you went through like a Hell in a Cell based room.
That's funny.
There's just very few pictures on it, but it just looks so bizarre. So,
but there's precedence there.
Yeah, WWF has, that was them at the time. WWE now.
WWE, don't say that too loud.
Yeah, WWF worked with them at the time. WWE, it's the same company, but there's precedent there that they've had. Whether 25 years is a long time has passed, but it has happened before. So, I guess my question is then, I know not everybody, and myself included, aren't like 1,000% knowledgeable in the area, but what I immediately envision this as is sort of like that very rumored Billie Eilish house, where essentially the thought process was you're walking into a journal of Billie Eilish, you're walking into her thoughts. I would personally rather have it something like that, where you're walking into maybe Bray's Lantern and you're going through all of these characters, because for me, it's hard to do a Wyatt Sicks without doing the Firefly Funhouse stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to do that, I feel like you should also include the Wyatt family setting, because that was my favorite iteration. I know more people love the Firefly Funhouse and the Fiend, but I loved like that smooth talking sermon, like cult leader style Bray Wyatt. That was my personal favorite. So I would like to see it done in that sense, where you're going through like the cabin, the Wyatt's like family swamps. Like in one of their promo pictures, it was Eric Rowan and Luke Harper holding alligators on their shoulders, and Bray Wyatt sitting there in like the rocking chair with like the straw hat. So I would like to visit that, and I'd like to go into the Firefly Funhouse, maybe have like some sort of Fiend layer, and then you can have something with the Wyatt Sicks at the end. But what would you prefer? Would you prefer all of that? Would you prefer just like one setting? How would you do this as a house?
I kind of like the route that you're going down. I think it would give it a little more substance than just focusing on one thing, since there is so much to dive into with the Wyatt Family 6 and the Firefly Funhouse and stuff like that. So I think they can go either way with it, but I'd rather see more of a compilation, I guess you would say. But I do think it's interesting to kind of go inside his mind and see how he was creating everything and stuff. So I think that could be a cool take as well.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I wish, or I would hope that they do it in a way that honors his memory.
Yes.
And honors the character. I don't want there to be a whole bunch of like scare actors dressed like him. I'd rather it kind of be based around the Six, and then they're, either I don't the word worship is stupid, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
like honoring him. Mm-hmm. And like they're welcoming you into the funhouse, or welcoming you into the Firefly, whatever you want to call it. Have the lanterns and the music playing, and you could have like some of his like Nick was saying, some of his voice work, some of his promo work, and have that kind of like cut over, like voiceover. But like, I don't want to see a bunch of people dressed like his character. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that would be a little weird, but I would like having like, I can imagine walking almost towards like a lantern and like hearing different snippets from like Bray Wyatt to the Fiend to Firefly Fun, like just like
exactly
like cutting in between each other to really show this like twisted duality of like Fiend and Bray, and it is disappointing, because there was supposedly, once we got to the Wyatt Six with Bray Wyatt, there was supposed to be this like final iteration of the Fiend where it was like even more grotesque. And there's a documentary on Peacock that I suggest, even if you're not a huge wrestling fan, if you're a horror fan, go watch this, because Bray is an absolute genius, and it fucking sucks that he's not here, because
be prepared. It's
I honestly, yeah, it is a very sad documentary. Because the way he did pass was just such a sudden,
terrible,
avoidable situation as well. It easily could have been avoided, but it just unfortunately wasn't. But I mean, I just wish we lived in a world where if Bray had just wanted to be done with wrestling, he could have gone right into horror movies and making, scripting up these stories and these
100%.
characters. I mean, each one of these characters is a great movie. And you say Rob Zombie, I think he would have followed his footsteps and had a career just like that, where he would have these cult-based movies.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best some of the best wrestlers, are the best actors in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and even if he was like just a creative behind the scenes, like I could see him wanting to be more of a director, writer, and coming up with these ideas, maybe not acting in all of them, but I'm sure he would, because that was kind of part of the wrestling gig. But I just, it would have been so fun to see what could have been. And I know he's a fan of Horror Nights because I've run into him there before, where we ran into him and Braun Strowman like 3 or 4 years ago.
And I was just going to say too, it's so sad too, because if this were to happen and were to come to Horror Nights and become a house, he would have loved it. It would have been so sick for him to see it.
Oh, yeah. And I do think that you'll see a lot of, if it is there, I think you will see a lot of wrestlers there going to check it out and like see what it's all about, because a lot of them do go to Horror Nights in general. Oh, it's very sad. Yeah. It is very sad. But for all we know, this could have been something, possibly kicked around with him, knowing how big of a fan he was at the event, and maybe he got shelved for obvious reasons, but, maybe the time is right. If they brought him back to honor them on WWE television, I don't think it's...
I also partly wonder if while he was alive, WWE was a little a little reticent to do it, because it was still an active character. It was an active story. It was something that they were still obviously benefiting from financially. But now that he's passed, they probably feel like, well, now it's something we can let his legacy live on a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Which, depending on how you look at that, I guess can be taken one or two different ways. I get where that would come from, where, rights issues become a problem even with like a movie. So when you have an active working pro wrestler and a very specific shtick that makes them a lot of money, they're not necessarily willing to just sell the rights to that to anybody. So I think now, as some people might look at this kind of as like, are they taking advantage of somebody's legacy for gain? But I think it's more of we want to honor him and his legacy and his life and the work that he put into what he loved doing. So that's kind of how I would look at it. So, but yeah, I think that's probably why we haven't really seen anything like this up until now.
Yeah, and there's a couple thought processes too that I'm curious if, I mean, all of his merch, I believe all the merch and whatever he sells, I believe that go directly to his family through WWE. So I would only hope that would sort of carry over too, if there was something at HHN where if that merch gets sold, it goes to the IP holder. The IP holder is technically Bray, so it circles back to his family.
I would assume so, yeah.
And then one of the other thoughts I had that Seamus brought up, that not that it makes sense, but wrestling storylines move so incredibly fast. It's a weekly show, multiple shows a week. The fact that stuff is kind of over with, it's easier to do a house base off of it, because if they plan a house in, say they're planning a year out, they don't know what the storyline for that is going to be in a year for wrestling, because it's not like a movie where you have the script, it's shot, and then it takes a year of post-production. Like, what it's going to be. It's not going to change. But with this, kind of how or why this whole rumored Billie Eilish thing never came to fruition, because when the event got bumped, that was kind of no longer her persona. She didn't want that evil, gothy kind of style vibe. So now with the Bray Wyatt, the Fiend, the Wyatt Sicks is still a current storyline. But if you were to do a culmination of his career and all these characters, those storylines are finished, unfortunately. So you don't have to worry about any sort of continuity break, or like, is he going to be a bad guy in a year? Is he going to be a face? Is he going to, like, you don't have to worry about that stuff as much, I don't think. So I guess before we finish off with this Wyatt Sicks style talk, is this a rumor that you actually put a lot of merit into? Do you think that this is like something that could or will happen this year?
I don't, unfortunately. I think it would be a very obscure choice to choose for a house. I think it would be something different, and I think that's what people have been asking for, so I think it could work out. But I just don't see it happening, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm not convinced yet either. I know that the rumor did. I don't know. I forget who dropped the rumor. I mean, it
legacy, but again,
yeah,
rumors always change. This is, and I don't think, I forget the wording, but I think this is, they kind of termed it more as like they had heard about it. They haven't said, yes, this is a rumor that's, or this is a house that's coming. They're like, I've heard that this idea has been kicked around, or I've heard it talked about at least. But I'm personally not like 100% sold on it either. I think it is a hard topic to do. And then which direction do you go? I think it can be, if done in the wrong way, it could be catastrophic. It could be done in a bad way. I don't know that they would willingly do that, but this is a gamble house. And as big as WWE is, I don't want to say will people come for it. I'm sure they will. I think it would draw more non-HHN fans to the event, people that are just wrestling fans. But you would hope that the best intentions were put forth when crafting an idea like this. But it does feel a little weird for me. Mm-hmm. So I'm not 100% sold on it. So let's get on to our concrete news. The last stuff we really have to talk about tonight, and there's really not much to discuss there, but the dates for HHN34 have been announced. They were just kind of put on the website, I guess, and then Horror Nights tweeted out, see you August 29th. So our official dates are Friday, August 29th through Sunday, November 2nd. One day earlier than last year. This is the earliest it's ever started.
Woo.
They're going to say that every year.
Yeah.
Every year that is one day for, even though if it's the same amount of dates, it doesn't matter. It's just that much earlier. But does this tell you guys anything? Does this tell you that the announcement schedule is going to be weird this year based off of like Epic and stuff? Because it seemed like a weird time to drop this.
It does.
Probably.
I think.
So, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think like they don't want to be like, HHN, don't forget about us. We're still coming this year, even though Epic's opening up, So I feel like they kind of want to drop a couple things here and there early on to kind of still get those ticket sales up for when it comes around, I would assume. But because I feel like this is I feel like we say that every year now, but this is still very early for them to drop something like that.
Yeah. And I'm curious when other stuff will come. I'm curious if they'll do anything before Epic. I don't know if they will. Maybe something, maybe one thing, but I really do think they didn't really kickstart it. I'm so bad at remembering when the announcements were, but do you think that they drop something before Epic opens in May?
January, February, March, April, May.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so. But then I'm trying to look back too from the previous years and see when they started announcing things, because I feel like it does get earlier and earlier every time. Because back in the day when they used to have the websites and I was a young kid and not prevalent with HHN rumors and stuff like that, that's when I would first see house announcements of everything, and they wouldn't start updating that website until mid-July usually.
So the first announcement last year was at Spooky Empire, and that was May 17th.
In May. Yep, which was in May.
And then that kick-started that run of that original dump where we had 5 straight days of original houses where they put Goblin's Feast, Major Suites, Museum, Monstrose, and Triplets, which was a complete 180 to the past couple of years where they announced the IPs first. This was all the originals 1st.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of weird doing that in May. So it's tricky. Do they stick to that early May? And do you want to get lost in the Epic news? Do you wait till June? I mean, you could wait a couple weeks, I guess, till after Epic opens to start dropping stuff.
I feel like we might see stuff in June. Start seeing stuff in June.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet too. I think
3 months ahead.
That mid to late June time is when we might start getting some announcements as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that about wraps it up, I think, for all the stuff we really had to discuss. There wasn't really much going on in the HHN news this week. Of course, we've always find some news because, well, we had the Wyatts to talk about. We had the date announcements and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, that's about it for now. We're probably going to come up with some fun little ideas because I don't think the next couple months will be as... I don't think stuff will be kicked around. So we're going to come up with some fun little ideas, maybe some old stuff that we haven't done yet in a while. We used to do like some top 10 lists or some brackets or something like that. Maybe we'll come up and craft something up. Maybe next week we'll talk about that announcement we had for June. We mentioned that we have an announcement to make. But I think I just want to keep stringing people along because it's still pretty far out. So I don't want to get lost in the shuffle.
Right.
Because I myself would forget about something already. But we'll talk about that at some point. What do we got? Oh, we have Shutter Sundays on Sundays. If you didn't catch up with our In a Violent Nature one last week, be sure to catch that on our YouTube channel. Go like and subscribe on YouTube. This week we have Oddity coming to you to kind of finish off our best of 2024 for the year for our Shutter Sundays in January. And February 1st, we will announce what our movies are for February and what the topic is. But yeah, that's what we got for you. That's all. That's all, folks.
All. I was just going to say that.
Until next time, this is Nick.
This is Seamus.
This is Jamie.
Happy haunts.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Fear and Beer, a Halloween Horror Nights podcast. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on whatever streaming platform you are listening to us on. You can find us on all of our socials at Fear and Beer Pod.